I titled today's mind map, Be Your Best Friend. Over the years, one of the things that I made a priority is to continue to experience within myself what I refer to as completion. Now, when we relate this over to the video on Tuesday, we recognize that we are the suggester and suggestee within ourselves. As in, we could look at any information that we experience in this five sensory world and recognize that we within ourselves are forming conclusions as to what this information means to us. And it's important to maintain inner conversation or an inner dialogue in which we recognize it as true and authentic. So, James Allen, in his book, The Heavenly Life, he says, "Say to yourself, I will live in my ideal now. I will manifest my ideal now. I will be my ideal now. And all that tempts me away from my ideal, I will not listen to. I will listen only to the voice of my ideal. Thus resolving and thus doing, you shall not depart from the highest, and shall eternally manifest the true." So let's look at this in relation to what I just mentioned. All that tempts me away from my ideal. And so as we discussed in the 7-day mental diet, if thoughts of disharmony that are not true and authentic to how you genuinely desire to live show up in mind, for whatever the reason may be, you have full authority, as in we are the authority within mind, and we have full ability, as in we are the only suggester in mind. We can allow them to pass, and what a person will discover through doing this is they will learn how to trust themselves and also recognize what was discussed in the Master Key System by Charles Haanel, in which he said, there is a world within, a world of thought, feeling, and power, of light and beauty. And although invisible, its forces are mighty. And so we can look around in this outer world and we can get some ideas, some stimulating ideas as to how we want to live. And what I would also like to propose, and in regards to this quote, that you have the ability to go beyond anything that has been created in this world and find within yourself distinct ways of thinking. Information that has not appeared in the five sensory experience yet. Invention, art, innovation that is not even close to anything that currently exists in the five sensory experience yet. And we all have the ability to do this. And one of the keys of doing this is to look within for your own approval and validation, for your own proof, to trust there's more to this existence of life that you have the ability to discover within. So I've mentioned this a number of times. Throughout the day, I have conversations with myself, intuitive conversations, in which during these conversations, ideas, hunches, inspiration, visions, and ways of overcoming seeming problems, seeming difficulties in my life are discovered from inside that I have never read in any books, watched in any videos, learned from any five sensory experience. Rather, it was revealed via this inner conversation. Now, the benefits of encouraging this, number one, is it's easier to maintain the ideal state of mind. Because if anything throws you off, for whatever the reason, into a different state of mind, we can recognize that that was a suggestion made from certain subconscious beliefs, mental chatter, and you can recognize that you had identified with that. And just as that was identified with, we could re-identify within ourselves to the ideal state of mind in which we get back into the flow again. And so those of you that are students of my subconscious mind program recognize that I encourage this authentic and true inner voice. I realized when I came across this information that I had these subconscious beliefs that was clouding out this inward relationship with myself. And so upon identifying these beliefs and releasing them, I work with the autosuggestion principle, which I also discuss in there, to identify in the world within true and accurate beliefs in relation to my ideal self-image and encourage those beliefs to the point where they become subconscious and operate automatically from that premise, as I found then that the things that once broke my flow no longer seemed to exist. And so what also occurred was a deeper relationship with this true and authentic inner voice, which is distinct from mental chatter, that we could say tempts us away from our ideal. That information no longer exists in mind. And because we are so light inside as a result of the release, we have a heightened degree of intuition and discernment. And it's so easy then, if thoughts of disharmony show up, to allow them to pass. And so I discovered this book, The Heavenly Life by James Allen, through an intuitive inner voice conversation that played out. What happened was when everything was closed in Ontario in 2020, I had a hunch to go live in Blue Mountains, Ontario. I was driving and having a conversation with myself, and this idea popped up, and I discovered a park, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And I also discovered snowboarding, and I'm going to relate both of these from the inner voice conversation as a result of listening to myself, being my best friend, to our conversation. So number one, I noticed that when I would go to this park, my mind would be very clear. I felt one with the world. It's a feeling that was so distinct that I remember it vividly right now as I'm recording this. And so this audiobook popped up within my awareness, James Allen's The Heavenly Life. And so I would run in this park and no one would be around. It was very quiet. Every now and then I would see deers. I would hear birds. In the distance I could see the mountains. In the evening I could see the sun setting. And sometimes I would sit on the park bench and listen to this audio, and I would listen to a paragraph or two, and I would pause it, and I would have a conversation with myself. I would say, what does this mean? What is he saying? And my inner voice would become more pronounced and provide me meaning. And the meaning was so deep and resonant and authentic, and I would feel the changes as I would resonate with this meaning. And this meaning was distinct, some of which I infused in the videos during that year, in which I received emails from people responding to those distinct statements. They would say things like, I've never heard that before, but that makes so much sense to me. Or they would say, that thing that you said was exactly what I needed to hear at that time. And all of this is a result of being my best friend. So when I refer to completion within, I'm also referring to being your best friend. To listen to yourself, to think for yourself, to feel for yourself, to understand for yourself, and recognize what he says here, which was also in The Heavenly Life. He said, to detach oneself from every outward thing and to rest securely upon the inward virtue, this is unfailing wisdom. Having this wisdom, they will be the same whether in riches or poverty. One cannot add strength, nor the other rob of serenity. Neither can riches defile, who has washed away all the inward defilement, nor the lack of them degrade, who has ceased to degrade the temple of their soul. To refuse to be enslaved by any outward thing or happening regarding all such things and happenings as for your use, for your education, this is wisdom. To detach oneself from every outward thing. And the way I experience it is during the changes that were occurring, I was allowing the changes to occur. Sometimes the business deals would change, my relationships change, my friendships would change, and I found it was easy to maintain that center because I realized that I have everything inside. And so what ended up happening was as everything was changing in the outer world, It reflected more of my ideal attributes. I discovered snowboarding. My business started to grow further. The information on this channel started to reach a broader array of people. I even went and updated all my programs, the 5 programs, to higher degrees of precision and refinement, in which the refinement was found by having inner conversations with myself while I would run in this park, which I would infuse in my consulting, infuse in the videos, infuse in my personal life, infuse in all areas of my life, and the distinct meaning which was found within proved itself in results universally. So I remember when I first discovered this inner voice. It was during a very traumatic situation when I was 7 years old, in which I felt completely abandoned and alone. Then all of a sudden, this voice popped up within me and started to comfort me. And I remember feeling completely safe and comfortable. Now, over the years, this voice would show up every now and then. And I found that when I did listen to it, everything worked out smoothly, everything flowed. And so over the years of bouncing back and forth and not listening to it and listening to it, I recognized it was my own beliefs that was making it challenging for myself to not live authentically from this inner voice, and recognized that I was always one with it. I discovered true and authentic characteristics and beliefs via this inner voice. I would take those ideas, those statements, those beliefs, and I would turn them into autosuggestions, and I would listen to them before going to sleep. I would say them to myself every now and then. And what I noticed then was the changes that occurred in my life felt congruent and authentic. What was also happening was this inner voice was becoming even more pronounced. And there were situations like when relationships ended or there were extreme challenges where it didn't feel like I could talk to anyone about it. And this voice would show up and communicate with me in a way which would help me see things from higher perspectives, give me the solution for challenges, speak to me in a way that I would feel deep love and peace and completion. In situations where I would have felt lost, I was able to engage in this conversation with my inner voice, and I would bring myself back to a peace and center, and whatever insights, perspectives, and solutions were provided within, when I applied them, which a lot of times were unique and distinct, I would apply what I was receiving within, and I would overcome my challenges. And this further brought forth a higher degree of completion within. And so what I noticed then is in personal life and business life, let's take friendships. Wherever I show up, I feel complete. There's no neediness kind of energy being experienced. There's no needing approval and validation, kind of verbal and nonverbal communication happening. And I believe that this experience is symbolic to being accepted within. So now it's important as we have this conversation to recognize that this is my experience, to intuitively relate to this conversation, to see where you're already doing this and that you can encourage it more so. You feel this is how I authentically am, and what you notice is other people show up in the same way. And all of this is by further encouraging being our best friend. And I believe we can all experience this level of completion by applying this information. I actually find by working with this information that I'm able to switch into different belief systems. I'm able to identify with one belief system and switch into another belief system. For example, I can switch into a state of mind where this inner conversation doesn't feel like I'm talking to myself. It actually feels fully like I'm talking to another person. And this inner voice always speaks from a premise of love. And let's say I was having a difficulty with someone or a relationship was ending. Like with a friend that you trust, if you say things that seems to reinforce lower self-esteem or blaming another person, your friend would empathize with you, be compassionate with you, and help you see it from a perspective of mutual harmony. And in those experiences, it actually feels like another person. And sometimes I wonder, is this my higher self? Is this my holy guardian angel? Or is it any other kind of what I have read and studied that other people have referred to for similar kinds of experiences? And as I mentioned, I can switch the belief. So I can switch it in which it is experienced as I'm having this conversation with myself. And so in one belief system, which I switched to, it is experienced fully like having a conversation with another person. And by switching into another belief system, it doesn't feel like that. And also what I find to be equally interesting is that this ability to do it was also revealed to me by my inner voice. So let's look at a few ways that we can encourage being our best friend, encouraging thinking for ourselves, recognizing that what we experience via our five senses is actually sourced from the world within, and that the world within is infinite. The premise is being our best friend. Number two, listening to ourselves, trusting ourselves, thinking for ourselves. Number three, recognizing that there's more to this outer world than we currently know. Number four, that there is an infinite world within. Number five, we want to find our own way of relating to this infinite world within. Number six, you can find your own distinct way as you believe it's possible. And number seven, practice. So here are some things that I did that helped me. Number one, I used to feel very insecure back in the days if on Friday or Saturday night I wasn't going out. The idea back in the days of being alone on a Friday or Saturday night was via a belief identification, causing me, and I'm causing this within myself, to think thoughts of incompletion. And so what I decided to do one time was to go in a parking lot, and I did this for a number of weeks back to back, and sit in the car by myself on a Friday and Saturday night, and just sit there and talk to myself. And what I noticed in the earlier stages was it felt very awkward. However, the inner voice would say to me, it's only awkward because you have this belief that it's awkward. When you release this belief, something amazing will happen. And then you'll know why you did this. And that ended up being true. So what ended up happening was each time that I did it, I started to enjoy being by myself. I would carry on these conversations with myself. I would listen to music. And I remember getting to a point where I said, this is as fun as hanging out with others and going out on a weekend. I now don't see one as better than the other. If I feel like going out, I'll go out. If I feel like being by myself, I'll be by myself. I genuinely did not see one as better than the other. And what I noticed then is how it played out in my life was a number of things. Number one, these inner conversations became more pronounced. I would listen to myself and I would apply the information from this inner voice. It would produce the results that I wanted. Number two, when I was around others, there was a heightened degree of fun, flow, calm, ease, and I had released from judgment, condemnation to myself, to them, and the interactions felt more natural. Another thing I started to do, as I mentioned earlier, I would go snowboarding by myself, and as I would go up the lifts by myself, I would talk to myself. I would even say to myself, this is so much fun. Then I started to travel more by myself, and I brought myself to a nice center. If I feel like hanging out with people, traveling and meeting some clients or something like that, I find it's not done from a place of lacking something within. It's done from a place of I feel complete within, and I'm bringing that completion bliss energy wherever I go. And I see it in the interactions. And for further elaboration on this, I recommend watching Tuesday's video in which I discuss some examples. And also there are moments where I want to be by myself, and I enjoy being by myself. And again, when I'm by myself, I'm fully complete. Also, what I notice is when I walk around in public, or I go to the airport, or I travel or go anywhere where there's people. Back in the days, I would, from a subconscious belief, look around to see if other people are having more fun, or they're doing something better, or something like that. And what I find now is that does not exist. I feel at ease with the environment. People allow me to be. I allow them to be. I feel comfortable where I am, and that's a wonderful thing. And I would like this to also be your experience, because as this becomes more of your experience, you'll notice the same effects. And your relationships with others, your relationship with yourself will transform, all by being your best friend. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, I live in my ideal now. I manifest my ideal now. I listen to the voice of my ideal now. And from this premise, I manifest the highest and true. This experience multiplies each day as I recognize a higher degree of understanding that wisdom is found in the infinite world within, a world of thought, feeling, power, light, beauty that I'm one with in discovery of how I truly desire to live, representing my ideal now, manifesting my ideal now, being my ideal now, listening to the voice of my ideal now. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.